Okay, if you'll do a roll call, please.
Sure. Brooke Brown,
Here.
Wallace Greener,
Here.
Chair Tom Farrell.
Here.
And at this time, I believe those are the only members.
And we've got about three more coming that said they were going to be here. So we'll go ahead and
Sure.
we'll go ahead and start the meeting because I'm afraid I'll lose power here for long. I have to run down to City Hall. So why don't we just, I'll make hay while the sun is not shining, but we'll do that. Brooke, let me kind of go over my impervious cover numbers first and tell you how I came to that. And Wally, what I did is I went through the Travis County Appraisal District sheet, and there are several caveats that I don't know how to answer. One is there were some on the appraisal district calculations, they had covered areas, usually just awnings that would be around the building. And those extended over to when I drove down, most of those extend over to over the building, the front of the building, the sidewalks that already were impervious cover. So I did not use those calculations as part of my impervious cover calculations. So on some of these, it could be a 1% difference or a 2% difference. It wouldn't be significant, but it is some possibility of differences on there. The other big one that I have is on the hospital site. There was no information available on the website for the Travis County Appraisal District. And I really don't, I've never seen that before, but, and I'm guessing that they had a request to keep it confidential, and the appraisal district kept it that way. I don't understand that, but that's, so I don't have a calculation for the hospital site. Just driving through it, it looks to be in the 60 to 70% range because most of that is parking, and they have a parking garage even there. So that's my best guess, but I don't have any calculations for that. So looking at these, I had, we have some that are in the 20s and the 40% impervious cover. Most of those back up to the creek to where we have most of the property that they would have, or a lot of their property would be in the floodplain. And so they weren't using that. The highest we had, of course, is the Mustagatti's, and that's at 86 point something percent. The two big ones, which were Mira Vista PUD and Rollingwood Town Center, they had the impervious cover calculation was included in their PUD agreement. And that was based on actual plans that came through. So that's what they came in at, 65% for Mira Vista, and Rollingwood Town Center was 55%. The reason that those were higher than our 50% is the Rollingwood Town Center dedicated 2 acres to Rollingwood, and that was not included in that 50% limitation that we had at the time. Also, several of these, we have an ordinance that says that if somebody dedicates roadway to us, they get to include that as part of their calculation for impervious cover. The Mira Vista PUD was based on negotiation, and y'all may or may not remember this, but the Mira Vista property was actually in Travis County. It was not in the city of Rollingwood. And so they dedicated quite a bit of right of way to the city. Plus, that was an incentive for them to request annexation. We are not allowed to annex without a property owner's permission. So that's how that came up. Did we lose some people? No, we didn't. I'm sorry. Brooke, are you still on here? I'm not seeing Brooke on here. Ashley? Oh, you're still here. Good.
I should be on
There
there.
there you go. I got you now. My technical expertise. I couldn't pull up everybody, but I think I got everybody now. Okay. So let me try to answer whatever questions I can on this. And I know everybody's just looking at this now. Wally, I have you at at 49.68%. Does that
When you
sound
give me
about right?
credit for that big detention pond, that's what gives me more credit.
Yes. Detention ponds are not impervious cover because it's not concrete. So that's what we had on that. But that sounds about right to you?
Yes,
And I want to make sure, I made sure we put an estimated on here because what I did is took the calculations of the appraisal district of the land area, the building area, and the paving. Now you've got some awnings on your building, or do you?
no awnings. I have covered walkways, but the walkways cover an existing impervious
Concrete,
cover.
yes. And I did not count anywhere where it was talking, from an appraisal standpoint, they do charge you for that, on that. But I didn't count that as impervious cover on that. So I'll let everybody kind of take a look at this for a minute, and I'll try to answer whatever questions I can on that. And I think, Ashley, did you send all the backup material on that, on the packet?
It's attached to the agenda packet online. I didn't email it. I think the 50 pages were too large.
Okay,
But it is in the packet online.
great. And I hope my calculations are correct. That's all I can say. I did the best I could. So the way we kind of left it last time is we were going to go to 55% with an additional 10% that would allow that to go up to 65%, but we were not counting the detention or water quality ponds as part of the impervious cover. And most people don't. Just so everybody knows, the city of Austin does count that, which I don't really understand why. But the county doesn't, and the other cities don't count detention or filtration, water quality issues as impervious cover. So these are the calculations that I have come up with. Now, I did leave one off. I need to make that point. I did not include Park Hills Baptist Church on there. They will have a very small impervious cover because they've got a large land mass. Some of it's in the floodplain, but they do have a fairly large area on that. So, and I can do the calculation on that, but I have been trying to meet with the church. Samuel, who is their pastor, is going to be gone until the end of August. So I probably will not be able to meet with them until then. So, but I do want to meet with them just to let them know what we're doing. So, and I know this is kind of quick on that, Brooke, but that's. I hope these calculations are useful for what we have on that.
Yeah. Well, and I've just sent you the email list for the strike force, the email I sent you earlier today, Tom. I just circulated that.
Good. And I apologize, I was not here when it came in, but I do have it and printed it so I can read it.
And it, you know what, it looks like there are a few properties that are well above the 50 or 55% right now.
Yeah.
Um,
The two biggest, of course, are the PUDs and the both PUDs are the biggest that we have that exceed
Right.
that. And again, all of these properties that we're dealing with that are on the both north and south side of BK's Road from Dry Creek, which is probably not dry right now, all the way to Rollingwood Drive, those properties will be able to utilize that ordinance we have that allows them, if they dedicate right of way, to use
Right.
that as a deal, which I've kind of looked at that from a standpoint of where we would be on that.
so what is 1015 Bee Cave Road? It's showing as being one at 70%,
Let me, I have to pull that back up.
right under Center One.
Oh, it's BK Woods Drive. It's a
Ooh.
15,000 square foot building, and it's actually Center 3 is what I know it as. Bill Skipping built 1, 2, and 3, and it's a little small building, 3-story building that's located off of if you go up Bee Cave Woods Drive, it's to the left. It's not fronting on Bee Cave Drive.
Okay,
Very small little building on that. But most of that is, that is, that's been there for quite a while.
Yeah.
Yes, that was in the early 80s that was built on that. It's a pretty building. It's a little stone building. They probably actually do not have enough parking for that building. Times I've been in there, it's been pretty tight. But that's what they got approved back in the day, so, or didn't get approved. The other big building we have on that, let's see if I can find that, is 3101 BK's Road. And it's that 4-story building. I just know it's got a title company in it because I've been there on that. But that has got, that's at 83%. Most of that lot is paved over.
and then I get 3003 that's next to 1015 Bee Cave Woods is one that didn't have information. That's the hospital.
And it's, in fact, Amber, you were going to call the appraisal district and find out what that is, but I can't imagine you've been able to get that in this shorter time.
No, I wasn't able to. I have that on my to-do.
But it's, if you look that up on the, if you look that up from a standpoint of the, what the appraisal district has, it basically, there are no numbers, no ownership, no nothing, and it just says null, 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 null as to the size of that. And that's a pretty good size piece of property on that. But most of that, my guess is that's probably well over 70% impervious cover because that's got a huge parking lot.
Yeah.
On that, and it's got a parking garage. Now, the other one I'll go with on that one, the building that's next to Tremont. Let me see if I can figure out which one that is. That one has got a fairly, that's next to the Tremont PUD.
Uh-huh.
That building, they are grandfathered. When they submitted their plans for that one building, and this was again in the early 80s, they submitted the plans for the second building also. And it's a duplicate building, but they went ahead and had enough parking to put it. They've got everything. They've got a little a spot there that they can build another building if they want to there.
Right.
And that would push that up right now pretty substantially. Because even right now it's, and let me see which one that is, Brooke, because I'm kind of, that would be, quickly. That's on the south side. South side, real quick. See if I can figure out which one that is. Yeah, I think. Sorry, my paper's got kind of. Tremont Building. Give me just a second. Let me get that one because that one's kind of an important one. Maybe an odd number. Getting closer. You may note that some of our addresses are kind of different than what they should be. So tell you, I was this first time I've looked at this in a long time. Looked at the appraised values on BKs, and it was very surprising to me where how different the valuations of these were when it came to. Some people are obviously a heck of a lot better at this than others at figuring out how to protest their taxes. I think it's 3101 BKs, and it's got 57,000 square feet in that building, and they can put another 57,000 feet. So,
Which building are you looking for, Tom?
3101 BKs, and it's going to be close to. It'll be close to 90% impervious cover when that's finished up.
Yeah, that's right next to Center One. Just to the left of it.
Maybe it's 3,000. Let me look at that real quick. Sorry. Yeah, I apologize. It's 3,001 bee caves.
Okay,
Yeah, that's, I think they call that, what is that? Tremont Center, maybe?
Yeah, I'm not sure what they call it, but it does have permission to build. Right now, it's got a 50,000 square foot building on it, and they can build another 50,000
Yeah,
square foot building.
that's my understanding too. And just to orient everyone, that's the property that's right in between the medical center and the, and kind of the executive home, zero lot line,
Yeah.
homes gated community, on the south side of Bee Caves Road.
That's correct.
Mhm.
So that one is right now at 60% impervious cover, but if you took if they built on that other spot, it would take up another 10,000 square feet of pervious cover. So it would be close to 70%, I would guess, when it's all finished up, or better. They've already done all the parking.
Yeah, they've done the parking for it, and you can kind of see where they'd have room for a kind of a twin building and kind of create a campus type feel.
So these are my estimates of impervious cover. And David, just so you know, where they had the appraisal district had an awning type of thing, I did not count that as impervious cover because it was mostly over existing concrete that they were doing. So I just didn't count it on that.
So that's what in the legal business we call a disclaimer, Tom.
Well, I've got 3 of them. That one, the hospital district had no information on the appraisal district site.
I mean, it's yeah, I mean, it's, I think we should take all these as, you know, kind of estimates, but having seen that, I mean, I don't think they're very far off. And, you know, the 2 that we do have, you know, at least some hard numbers on are basically Endeavor and Mira Vista, because we have PUDs on those.
That's correct. And those were as built calculations.
Yeah, that's right.
So we know that those are correct. Rest of them, y'all just have to do a plus or minus on my calculations, if you would. So, and then I did not include Park Hills Baptist Church on this calculation. I could do it, but I just didn't do that one because I thought that was their impervious cover, given where they are, is going to be probably well under.
It should be real low, actually.
Yeah. So because they've got so much land down below where they are. So, so I hope this met everybody's requirement of what we need. There's not a better way to do this other than surveying each property, which I'm not sure we could get permission from the owners to do that, but whether they could or not, it'd be very expensive to do it as built on each one of these. So, and unfortunately, a lot of our buildings on Bee Caves Road were built at a time when we did not have how should I word this? And this has really got to be touchy, where I don't think that we didn't have the rules in place for impervious cover, and we did not have inspectors, city inspectors. We were using third-party inspectors at that time. So, and because of that, we ended up with, like for instance, Center 3, we ended up with an extra story that we didn't have plans for at that time.
Mhm.
So can't explain why, don't know, but that's what happened.
okay.
So if you took these numbers, you see that most of the larger properties are going to be well over the 50% mark. some of the smaller properties are certainly going to be over that, but they back up to the creek. And they're the smaller little properties like Mustagatti's is pretty much all impervious cover.
Yeah. And that's why I think you're seeing, I mean, partially why you're seeing Mr. Gaddy's remodeling in the existing box as opposed to anything new there.
Yeah. I don't know what's going in there.
They filed for a permit?
They
About-
are under permit. It's a bank.
Bank,
Well,
Yep.
great.
And you're correct. That's why they didn't, they're keeping it to a remodel of the shell. Because it was, the entire lot was not conforming.
Yeah.
right.
Let's see, which, Kerry, let's see, which, that's 2800, 2802 and 2814 and 2808 is the same owner. And that's the little strip center, but we have there. But again, that backs up to basically the acreage that the city of Rollingwood owns behind there.
Right.
And that's been there when it was a, Ms. Ballard had a convenience store there.
Oh, that's before me.
Yeah, that was actually before my time too. I just know that from visiting with her one time.
Mhm.
Yeah, although the crazy thing, and I believe your numbers and everything, Tom, but then I look at the boundaries on that property. I'm like, how on earth is that, you know? I mean, I'm looking at aerial right now and I'm kind of going, you know, how is that only, you know, whatever the, I think it was 50 some odd impervious cover, 50 some odd.
Well, remember, you got to put 280, it's two buildings. It's, I mean, it's two tracks, 2808 and 2802.
Oh, and I see part of what's going on.
If you put them together, it'd probably be, you know, close to 60% when you put it all together.
They have some, I think it looks like they have some unpaved areas that are just gravel and not vegetated.
Yeah, they do. On the side of that building, they've got some property, and they've actually got a fairly good amount of property in the front.
Yeah.
And this is one where they got the, they don't own that property, but they did dedicate property to the roadway, so they get to count that, and that's not included in this calculation.
Yeah.
So
On a related note,
they'd be up to the 70% range if you looked at that.
I have heard they're going to basically close that Goodwill intake there.
As long as they don't close Ryan Reed Cleaners,
Yeah,
yeah, that's a good one.
yeah, they do a good job.
So are there any questions on this? And I think all the backup material we sent, and I apologize for it being so late. But this is kind of where we my estimate of looking at all this. So.
Okay. It's good. Helpful.
Hey, and I'm assuming on the Palisades that we included on that impervious cover calculation, the septic fields.
I included the septic fields, and I also included the big part of that made that under 50% was Wally has a fairly large detention area. Wally, is that detention or filtration? I think it's detention and then detention. But it is, it's not paved, so it would not be counted as that. And my guess is that's a good half acre or better, isn't it?
Where's that?
Wally?
West, east end of the property.
Next to the creek. I know it's next.
Yes, next to the creek.
Is it pretty wooded over there?
Pretty what?
Wooded?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's, yeah, because I remember seeing it. I remember seeing it from the parking lot, but you can't see it on aerials because of the tree canopy, which is nice.
Yeah. So,
But it's basically, sorry, Thomas, basically right in between basically where the east side of your property and the what I would call the arroyo right there.
Yeah.
any other questions on this? I know we have several people from the public on here. Any questions that anybody has on this that are not on our task force? That we can answer any questions on that? Not seeing any raised hands. Ashley, if you see any raised hands, oh, Diana.
I do. Yes,
I do,
Diana
please.
Wallace.
Let me see if I can get on here now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, we're getting
Good
better
job.
at this, guys. This is good news. I just wanted to bring one subject up with reference to the septic field since it was mentioned. I was really hoping, in fact, all of us that attended and of course went to the meeting with Tom was so graciously held. We're particularly interested in the potential development, of course, of the septic field and how that was going to work. And right at the end of the session last week, Elizabeth, who is unable to be with us, it's summertime, she's traveling in Washington, and other folks are not in town for the holidays. That was a marvelous map that she put up that showed the potentially developmental area, so on and so forth, with the 75-foot setback. And one of the discussions that came into being was the fact that we couldn't make the builders do anything that would diminish the visual line, the sight line and such, but we could ask them if they would help us out with not having to look at their buildings from where we are. And somebody said, well, we can't require them to do it. But I've got to say, if it's an understanding that they're going to do it, speaking for a friend of mine who is on but does not have access to an audio line, her experience was the deal was what was left of her green space, those few feet in back before her hillside got chopped off, was supposed to be planted with trees and shrubs. And a fence was supposed to be erected and it was supposed to be maintained. The trees and such, although allegedly required, never appeared. And she had a great deal of difficulty getting the builder to do what she understood was required to do, which was to maintain the fence in her backyard. I can't speak to it directly because a wooden fence was put up in my grandparents' backyard so that they wouldn't have to look on what they could no longer see anymore. And my grandfather asked that it be taken down because he had to get on a step ladder and get up and put his head above the fence so he could feel the breeze. He said otherwise it was like living in a coffin. And he said he wasn't ready for that yet. So we asked specifically that the fence be taken down. And I indeed had to go to city and say, write this down, document it. We do not want the fence. My grandfather wants to be able to feel a breeze such as there is. We also did not get any landscaping. We didn't get any benefit of any kind of blocking of what was done to us. So I think when you say that we'll have to rely on the goodwill of the builders and the developers, frankly, that's not enough. I'm really hoping you can come up with something more than that, because when we've relied on their goodwill before, nothing has happened.
Well, I think
That's all I've got to say on that subject. I'm hoping we can discuss it more when the rest of us can be present. This was not a good meeting day for us to try and pull people together. I'm hoping we can return to this subject, if not next week, then the following week. And that's really all I have to say. I just didn't want it left behind because it was at the end of the meeting and everybody was terminating, and it was some pretty important information. So thank you for letting me exceed my 3 minutes. I'm sorry.
No problem, Diana, I think way we left that last time is we were going to start at 55% impervious cover and allow to go to 65% if these type of things were done. You had a vegetative barrier that was there. So it'd be an incentive. It wouldn't just be we want you to do it. It would be a real incentive to let somebody do it, to make them do it. I mean, that's a pretty big incentive for somebody to be able to do that. I think that some of the other requirements we had were that we did have that they were going to have to make sure that they did not have the light shine on the property. We talked about that last time too. So these are requirements, not just, or it's our recommendations that these become requirements to do that. But the vegetative barrier, I thought was something that most members of our strike force felt was important to include in there. And in fact, Brooke, you've got some other thoughts on that. And I think there's a good, one of the things that I've been trying to research has been the Green Roof Program, which I think is got some merit. We were going to count that as part of the extra incentive for impervious cover if somebody would do that. So you wouldn't be looking at per se a building. Now, the other thing we tried to do was to move the building as far forward off of the rear property line as we could. And to do that, we were willing to go 5 feet off of the TxDOT right of way from the front side setback. So that would give a little bit more development area on that. I'm not sure that I got a copy of Elizabeth's drawing. I saw it, but I'm not sure that I got a copy of it. Ashley, did we get a copy anywhere of that? If not, maybe Elizabeth can send that, because I thought that was a good drawing that she did.
I think
It was extremely helpful. It put things in perspective, very much so.
Yeah.
I think it's in an email from either Ashley or Amber to the strike
Okay.
force.
Okay.
Probably Ashley.
Yeah, then I do have it. I know I've seen it, but I just didn't know where I had it, but I do have it. So getting back to this impervious cover calculations, I just wanted to make sure that if there's any questions, and if somebody wants to look at this and redo these calculations, please feel free to do so. I'm not without, these are my estimates that came up on that. So, and I hope the math is good. So, do I see anybody else have any questions on the impervious cover part of this? And David, have you got a copy of Brooke's letter? Just
Yeah, I think Brooke was kind enough just to forward it
right.
a little bit ago to everyone. So thank you for that.
And Brooke, let me, we'll go through this on item by item. There's a couple of things that I see. I'm going to skip 1A and B because I think that's, we'll have more discussion on that. Item number C, I think that is, I think that's an absolute given because we do not want to, we don't want to have any water quality issues and we don't want to have any downstream flooding caused by development. So I'm 100%, that was my biggest part about any increase in impervious cover, that we don't have water quality issues. We don't have any kind of issues that occur downstream of where somebody's building.
Yeah, and Tom, I'm gonna basically make an observation, and Carrie, correct me if I'm misstating this, but I mean, I think it's standard operating procedure and basically development everywhere now to have, particularly on the drainage and stormwater side of things, have an engineer sign, seal, and certify it. And so I think that's, vital as part of the development process for any property in the city, in particular, any of these commercial properties.
And then, Brooke, on item number 2A, we have, and Carrie, you're on here, we have a compatibility standard in our ordinance, in our building ordinances.
Mhm.
And we do require that those type of things be done, or at least some. And I'm thinking that I agree with most of this on 2A, that we do that. That's not a particular, we did that on Rollingwood Town Center. And we did it specifically on the parking garage because that was the one that was most affected by our.
Well, and for those on the call, since they don't have this,
Oh,
2A says, when roofs are visible from adjacent residential lots, we recommend that the city adopt appropriate design requirements that mask and/or eliminate the impact of all building elements, that is AC units, vents, wireless facilities, etc., by requiring such elements to be located at ground level or not on roofs, or if located on roofs, masked by the roof. Just so
I would like to, I'd like to make sure we include solar panels on that because that's becoming more and more prevalent on buildings. And solar panels can be, of course, they're going to be aimed to the west, but they're still, they can be masked from a standpoint of impact from our residents on that.
They should, Tom, they should be like going actually kind of southwest. So
Yes.
on the north side, that should at least help any glare off of those.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be an issue there, but even masking the deal would not, and you can do that by a lot of different ways that's been done on that. Now the question, Brooke, I have is on that, and it's just something to think about. If I build a 30-foot building and I'm masking this, and to do that, I have to, the mask part of that, or where we're doing that, exceeds the 30 feet because it's the highest point. That could cause an issue on somebody, but since we're limiting development on the north side to 2 stories, that may not have an issue on the north side. It might on the south, but not on the north side.
Yeah, I think the problem you're going to run into is by having 2 stories and 30 feet. Most of the people with modern building design who are going to build 2 stories are going to build to 30 feet with a flat roof to get, higher ceilings that tenants are going to want and be able to put vents and ducts and everything else in the ceilings and the floor. And so, I think you're going to basically have a flat roof building, and particularly when you look at vents and AC equipment, typically, with a flat roof building, those go on top. So, may want to think about, in terms of masking and stuff, basically some allowances for someone who's willing to mask it with either, some sort of roof design, a little bit of additional flexibility in that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that, and we're not talking about a lot of,
No.
it's not 10 feet. It's probably a couple feet, I would imagine, that would work on that.
But that would only be if the roof design is something that's spelled out in the code.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think I think we're on the same page. I'm just saying, if they come up with a plan that masks all this and it goes to 31 feet where the highest point of the mask is, you know, I think that's probably, or 32. I don't think that's going to be.
I've seen some a couple pretty cool designs along Bee Caves Road that have been fairly recent that have kind of incorporated that as the design element. And like, you know, the one that comes to mind is there's a 2-story strip center kind of across from where Sway is. And
Yeah.
they have a I'm trying to think of the right architectural term, but they have kind of a angled roof line that basically where they have they have a bunch of things, you know, flat roof, but a bunch of things hidden underneath. But the roof slopes from back towards residential where it's low to the top and kind of creates an architectural design almost like a wing. And, you know, something like that, if you use, you know, design element like that to basically, you know, kind of create something that's, you know, kind of basically masks and shields some of the mechanical equipment on a flat roof from the residents, I think that can be a kind of nice touch. The other thing that's kind of interesting is like what Sway has done architecturally with basically kind of, you know, creating different roof line levels and in order to mask some of the mechanical up there. They also have, I think I think they also have some gardens and things up on the roof where they grow herbs and produce and whatnot.
Mhm.
And I think the concept is something that we should do. We've done that with like Rollingwood Town Center, and I think this is something I'm 100% in favor of doing that because nobody likes to look at an air conditioning unit on top of a building.
Yeah, and I think one of the ways to do it is basically make it clear that, you know, well, I mean, basically make allowances for a you know, roof line or a screen that maybe goes beyond that 30 feet, so long as it's not, you know, basically creating more occupied space by going above 30 feet, but basically serves as a screening device.
Yeah.
I mean, that is one thing I will say about the Palisades is I've been in some houses that back up to the Palisades, and you know, at least when you see the roof on Wally's, you see a gabled roof as opposed to a flat roof with a bunch of mechanical equipment out there.
Right. And that's where
Um,
I came from, that meeting we had with the people around.
Yeah, I think
Palisades.
I think it's a good suggestion, Brooke. A good
yeah,
idea.
I do too. I think that
Incentivizing that.
we've talked about that, but I think this is the wording on this is good. I do want to, and I'll work on some wording, Brooke, with you in regard to if they exceed the height limitation as a masting deal. Although I don't want to give an incentive to go as any higher, but if it's required to mask that we don't penalize them for doing it on that. It's only going 2 stories. Yes, Wally.
Did I understand that somebody said that my mechanical equipment is on my roof?
No,
I said that's one of the nice things about the design of the Palisades is that you have a gabled or, you know, gabled roof and you don't have a flat roof and so you can't see mechanical equipment on the, at least the parts of the Palisades I've seen.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood because all of our mechanical equipment is ground level behind the buildings at ground level, not at any height.
No, that's what David's saying.
I misunderstood him. I'm sorry. I was saying, no, ours is not on the roof.
On 2B, Brooke, I think, Carrie, don't we have a lighting ordinance that requires this? I don't know if we've gone consistent with dark skies policies, but we have something in regard to light shields have to be down and not shining into.
We do. We have some very specific lighting requirements and we require lighting plans. If lighting's involved, that has to be reviewed.
But we don't address, we don't call it the dark skies policy, I think.
No, we haven't adopted a dark skies policy yet.
Okay,
But for commercial, when there have been discussions regarding dark sky, they've more centered around residential in the last year or so. But we do have existing commercial lighting restrictions.
Yeah, and it's my understanding, Carrie, that basically all those restrictions are designed to try to eliminate or ameliorate impacts to residences.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
I'm a proponent of the dark skies. I'll just tell you that, because I think that's a great thing to do. And I don't mind putting that in there as a recommendation, because I could see that just based on everything that we've heard, Brooke, at our meeting and everything, that's something that's intrusive to our neighbors.
The one thing I would want to take a look at a little bit more, Tom, is, for residential, dark skies makes, a lot of sense and everything else. You run into a little bit, and I'd want to look at the exact definition of dark skies, because when you come to commercial, you have aspects dealing with safety and security, both from, parking areas, vehicular traffic, et cetera. And so I'd want to take a look at kind of how that applies from a commercial standpoint.
But Carrie, would you send everybody a copy of that lighting ordinance for commercial?
Yes.
I think that would be useful, and we may need to strengthen that, Brooke. I'm a proponent of doing that, because I think that's great to do.
What I haven't found the language because I haven't had time to go research lighting ordinances. But the concept that I have is that for commercial, because of security and other issues, that you implement as much as possible or reasonably feasible.
Yeah, and we're not.
Requires is the light be shielded at the top as opposed to just bare. So it's most typical modern lighting will have that incorporated in some fashion. As I noticed new lights on buildings and
the concept there, and that's really what we have to get to is on this, because we're not going to write the ordinance. But I think the concept, I agree wholeheartedly with you on that.
And kind of a good example of that actually is, and it's not a new center anymore, but it's like the Village or Westlake Village, because you drive by there at night and it's not lit up. It's not lit up like a stadium. You can't really see a bunch of lights because everything is turned down. But when you get into the interior, the parking areas and everything else are still well lit, but you don't have any light pollution from that going up or out.
right.
And so I think we're in agreement on the concept there.
Okay.
Because I think that's.
And the main thing is, and I'd be interested in looking at our cities. You just, really want to protect, the residences from the light pollution in particular.
And Brooke, I'm going to let you, since our residents don't have a copy of this, would you go over number 3?
Yes. Number 3 is a combination of landscape, shade, and setback incentives. This would be a recommendation that the city require commercial property landscaping to do 2 things. A, within the setback along Bee Caves Road, include sufficient trees to shade sidewalks along Bee Caves Road. And then on B, employ a tree ordinance similar to that in residential areas that will preserve heritage trees and require replacement of protected trees so as to maintain current tree canopies.
On A, my concern, and the only concern, I really would love to see that, but remember, TxDOT, when they take right away, they take back from, remember, they have another 20 feet from the sidewalk or 10 feet from the sidewalk. And TxDOT will not allow us to put trees in that.
And they're
Uh,
right.
Well, that here is, if you look at the very top, and this may, y'all throttle me back if I need to be throttled, but what I was thinking here was that we could tie the reduction of the setback, what had been the 25-foot setback along Bee Caves
Yeah.
Road, to the requirement that TxDOT right of way be contributed, move that from 25 to 5 if the property owner will contribute the TxDOT right of way and agree to landscape within the new setback along the sidewalks.
I agree with the concept. The only caveat I've got is they're going to be back from the sidewalk because the TxDOT's going to require extra land on the other side of the sidewalk.
Oh, okay.
And so they're not going to own that land
Well,
to do that. And TxDOT will not let us put trees in their right of way.
right, and the play on that is basically we're going to want TxDOT to pay for at least a front side sidewalk, akin to what they've done on the new areas of Bee Caves, the Bee Cave expansion. One of the things, Brooke, I really like the idea of
Yeah.
incentivizing shade tree plantings. And, one of the things that, we have talked from time to time about possibly incentivizing on a lot of those properties, particularly on the north side, a rear sidewalk, a rear access sidewalk for pedestrians. And one of the ways to do that is potentially basically try to incentivize planting sufficient shade trees to shade pedestrian walks and pedestrian areas.
Yeah, just broaden it a little bit.
Yeah,
Dave.
because I love the idea of, and I'm trying to think of I love the idea because I'm trying to think of ways to, incentivize people to plant trees to shade things like, walkways, sidewalks, patios, things like that. Because I think,
Parking spaces. They become prime spots. Everybody wants a shaded parking spot.
particularly in August.
Well,
So David, are you saying you would like that along the rear of the lot?
Or I mean,
both.
hell, I'd like shade trees anywhere as part of landscaping plan on the lot.
Yeah.
And I am agreeing with you. I'm trying to think of kind of a good mechanism to incentivize it, frankly.
Well, and I did some driving around Austin, and there are places where there are trees planted. I don't
yeah.
know how they got that done, how they accomplished it, whether it's in the city right of way or it's in the
The city of Austin will plant trees.
property.
TxDOT, they were adamant about not. I mean, even if you look at what they've done on Westlake Hills,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
took down all the trees and didn't replace them. They made sure that they didn't have them. I love the idea, and let me just say this from the standpoint of, and I like David's concept of to landscape on the front, but also if we end up having ultimately a sidewalk that goes along the rear of these properties, that would be also shaded. That's what David is suggesting, I think.
Well, and I also like the idea of, basically creating and incentivizing shade trees, kind of where they can fit them into, the design elements, because, particularly, and also I think, because I think you make areas a lot more pedestrian friendly, a lot more attractive if you have pedestrian walkways that are shaded. I 100% agree with that. They get used a lot more. The other thing is, I'd want to also, be in, especially encourage it in areas where they're either going to provide screening from the neighborhood or from residential parts of the neighborhood, and or also add to kind of that canopy feeling.
Well, and what I realized too is that, when we reduce that front setback along BK's Road, a lot of the trees that exist currently are in that setback.
Yeah.
So we're going to be asked, how are you going to protect trees and what are you going to require if those trees get taken out? So I think it also meets that need as well.
And that's item B on your list. And for those that are don't have a copy of this, Brooke, would you go over 3B?
3B would recommend that the city employ a tree ordinance for commercial properties similar to that in residential areas that will preserve heritage trees and require replacement of protected trees so as to maintain current tree canopies.
Yeah, and I think what I would like to ultimately, if they can't put them up on the front, I'd like for them to be as a vegetative barrier on the from our neighborhood to see on that. But I don't see any reason. The heritage trees are something that we've got to protect in Rollingwood, and I'm delighted that city has a tree ordinance now, a heritage tree ordinance, and I count that as one of my great defeats in city government, that I've twice tried to get that passed and failed, and I'm glad that it finally got approved.
Brooke, are you proposing applying the existing residential tree ordinance to commercial properties?
Yeah.
I have not gotten that far.
Okay.
I know that it only applies today to residential, so there's not anything that applies to commercial. And
Brooke, let me interrupt you real quick. There is a provision in the residential tree canopy ordinance that applies it to other zoning districts, and I can pull that code section.
okay. I was
So-
not,
So it would apply to commercial districts now. Is that correct, Carrie?
Let me pull this section of the code and read it to you.
Okay, thank you.
and I've heard one critique of it, that the current ordinance doesn't require the tree to be replaced with a native tree or a tree of the same quality, so to speak. So we may want to tweak that too.
So where'd it go? I lost it. Okay, 107-370 reads, the subdivision applies to the property in the residential zoning district and to any other property to which section 107-341 of this code does not apply. And section 341 refers to the landscaping requirements. It's landscaping requirements under Division 10. So there are elements of the residential tree canopy ordinance that do apply. I'd have to kind of do a little breakdown of how it does and doesn't, but essentially, if it's not in this 20% of total area devoted to landscape open space for which one tree is required for 2,000 square feet, then the residential tree canopy ordinance applies. So.
Is there any reason that we wouldn't apply the heritage, our current residential heritage tree ordinance to commercial? I can't think of any reason that I would be opposed to that. Because I think that would be, that's something that I would, if we're trying to encourage canopy development, that would seem to me that would fit right in with what we're talking about.
I can't think of any reason why not to. I do know that there are some strict legal requirements when it comes to tree removal, and it relates back to the state. And when you have prohibitions for removing trees entirely, it sets you in a different class of rules, and certain types of cities don't. And I know that legal and council, when this was getting drafted, went back and forth about that. And the state has stripped a lot of certain types of cities' abilities to regulate these. So I would want to see, but I think just generally, I don't see any reason why we couldn't.
Maybe you have any thoughts about why we wouldn't just apply the commercial tree ordinance to commercial, the residential tree ordinance to commercial properties? I can't think of any.
Here's the only thing, and I want to bring back up something that Brooke said, because I think as it applies to commercial, particularly when you're talking about a redevelopment scenario, I think it bears some thought from our process. Right now, as I understand it, of the residential tree ordinance, if a tree over, is it 20 inches? I can't remember, but or 12 inches for protected tree, like say you remove a oak tree that's over 12 inches, you can replace it with a suite of trees that include things like, crepe myrtles and other trees. The question is if we want to do, apples to apples, or if we want to take a look at, okay, for certain kind of, trees, and, from my perspective, I think oaks fall into it, but that's about it. For certain, types of trees, do we want to say, okay, if you, remove a great big oak, we want you to plant, a new big oak, or what a lot of other, and when you're redeveloping a site, completely redeveloping a site, it provides you with kind of a clean palette to move things around and do more things. What some jurisdictions do is say, okay, if you remove, a 20-inch oak tree, we want you to replace it with, basically, we don't want you to replace it with a, 2-inch oak tree. We want you to replace it with either a 20-inch oak tree, which you can't find unless you just move that oak tree, or we want you to replace it with, let's see, 20 inches. So 4 or 5-inch oak trees, things like that. And from my standpoint, oaks are kind of the ones what, from my perspective, I'd like to be protecting. But, it's, that's just kind of, I think what Brooke said, I think has some merit to discuss.
But if we just applied the existing ordinance to commercial properties, that gives the leeway to do all that if they need to.
That's true.
But it does require,
with the one caveat, Brooke, that they don't have to replace that with native trees, which I think is I don't think our
it depends on so with the residential tree canopy ordinance, it depends on where the tree you're removing is located. If it's relocated in the right of way or in kind of like publicly owned space, then you have to replant it with a heritage species unless there's overhead power lines in that location, in which case you replace it with the species that doesn't grow as tall. But there are scenarios when it has to be replaced with the oak, elm, pecan, those heritage, hardwood species.
Yeah, that's right. The only caveat is, when you're replacing it in the area where there's overhead power lines, I think you could do mountain laurels, or crepe myrtles.
But our existing ordinance takes that into account.
Correct.
So, Brooke, I think that, the concept of having that apply to commercial, I think it sounds like we're on the same page with that. So.
I'll
uh,
take over it carefully.
We just have to word it how we
Okay.
want to word it, but I think conceptually moving on. Diana, I see you've got your hand up.
Just a real quick question. My system was going in and out, so I didn't get all of what David was saying. But in talking about creating shade trees along sidewalks and towards the front, is there any way we can get that done for the resident in the back?
Yeah.
You'll plant shade trees for a sidewalk. Can we have shade trees in the back along the residential line of sight?
Yeah, and I think that was one of the incentives that we were adding to increase impervious cover, that we do increase the canopy in the rear of the lot. And so, yes, we've already, I think we're in agreement on that we want to try to not only request, but incentivize somebody to have a canopy in the rear that acts as a vegetative buffer from our residential area to our commercial area.
Thank you.
And it's not just a recommendation. It's not a use your best effort. We're giving them a big incentive to do that, which is I think a proper way to go about doing that. Because I think that what ends up happening is we're kind of balancing the fact that we've already got a lot of impervious cover buildings with a lot of impervious cover on BK's Road, with the fact that we would, if we hope, and the intent of what we're doing is to try to move forward with maybe some redevelopment that is not so intrusive on our residential area, but also helps the city. So, how we go about doing that, I guess you could do it two ways. You could say that, that you're required to do it, which may mean that we end up with what we've got, or we offer incentives to where people can redevelop property and still make it economical for them to redevelop, but also make it much less intrusive to our residential neighbors.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Brooke, I think that everything that I didn't see, unless I'm missing something on all of those things we talked about, I think we're in pretty much agreement, and I appreciate your comments on that very much. The impervious cover, we'll go back on that, A and B, 1A and B. My recommendation would still be that we come back and it's not a lot, but it's that we go to the 55%, just given where we are. And I want to make sure that we offer enough incentives to redevelop, with the caveats that we have, where we come in and we say, okay, look, you can have greater impervious cover. Number one, water quality, we want a certification from your engineer, and that's very important to me, that we have a certification from the engineer that we're not going to have any downstream issues from additional runoff. And David, I think last meeting, you were very adamant about the water quality issues that occur with that also is there.
And it's they're gonna have to seal and certify that for the TCEQ as part of the Edwards rules, as part of doing a watershed protection abatement plan. However, I want them to also certify that to us as a city too.
Yeah. Now we're talking the B part of that, the incentives. Brooke, I don't want, this is your letter. Would you mind reading or go over the 1B? Because I think that was great. I love that way that was.
The B, this is to incentives, which if done would allow the property owner to increase their impervious cover limits. And it would say, we also recommend that the development code incentivize permanent low impact development practices such as rainwater harvesting, bioretention, rain gardens, green roofs, filtration and filter strips, pervious pavement, conservation landscaping using native plants and trees that promote the area's natural habitat, including bird, bee, and butterfly friendly and deer tolerant plants, and incentivize natural area preservation over and above the required greenbelt setbacks by
Yeah.
development of a schedule of impervious cover limit increases up to an additional 10% for use of such practices, so long as there are no increases to stormwater runoff, either volume or rate of flow of runoff.
Yeah.
So you do a certification if you're building to the 50% impervious cover, and then you also do a certification if you're doing these additional incentives that you're not increasing the flow over the 50% flow.
Yeah. Now, right now, just to bring everybody up to date, our baseline is 50%, but if you do certain things, you can go up to 70%, 70, 75,
Well,
70.
It's right now, as I read it, it's 50% period. However, there's certain types of,
Yeah.
I think the idea of pavers without mortar in between count as like 75%, and the what do you call it? The pervious pavement, I think counts only as 50%. So you can get, basically, if you use those products, you can get, in theory, for like, basically where you have parking areas or walkways, you can get, additional coverage above 50%, in the theory that those are partially pervious, even though they're kind of take the place of hardscape.
Let me kind of look at, think about, let me just throw this out for a question. So if we did 50% and then we said the incentives would go up to, say, 15%, because I want to really give some incentives to that, that would still get us to the 65% that we talked about last time. And with these caveats to where this did, that would be something that I would probably be willing to look at, provided that right now the extra impervious cover you get is not determined by a engineer, but it's determined by the city council. And I would prefer that goes to, we have an engineer that comes up with this, the plan that promote, including all these things. And Brooke, the other thing I'd like to do is not have this be just a list. I'd like to put or other things that maybe the engineers can come up with, because in the next couple of years, we don't know what's going to come up that's going to be
Right.
But I want it to be certified by the engineer
or we can tie it to a standard from, most of this language in that paragraph came from this low water impact development practices is a term of art that's used by LCRA. And
Yeah.
even the county refers to the LCRA low water impact standards for those kinds of impervious cover incentives. So
Yeah.
we could do something, or other similar measures approved as a best practice by, you know, we can come up with a language, some independent group.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the concept there. I like to have incentives. I would like to include additional vegetative buffers between the commercial and residential areas as being one of those incentives.
Okay,
Because I think that that's something that we've heard very strongly that people want. And I do want it to be, if we had that, a landscape architect would come back and say, okay, we've done this to gain this extra impervious cover. So it's not just a political vote, and not that our council votes politically, but I mean, it could be, you know, it could be something that the engineers come back and say, yes, this has a positive effect on meeting these requirements on that. But I do want the vegetative barrier. The other thing that I would like to add on that, and this is in deference to Elizabeth, who's not on this call, she's been very concerned about the safety issue of being adjacent to commercial properties. And I would like to add additional safety, addressing additional safety concerns to get that incentive. That could be one. And that could be, you know, a fencing or something that would be, I don't know what exactly it would be, but I'll leave that up to the engineers to come up and the designers to come up with a plan that adds a safety feature to our residential neighbors that abut commercial properties on that. Does that make sense? I've kind of wandered around on that a little bit, but.
Hey, Tom,
Dave?
I have a question and then also I kind of wanted to, in a comment, if I can.
Sure.
One of the things, and Brooke, I love the list there. One of the things that I am a little bit skeptical of, and I might, if it were me, I'd recommend we think about taking off there, is I'm not a big fan of pervious pavement in terms of the way it's kind of counted. And here's why. I think sometimes basically, you know, especially if we're going to count pervious pavement as 50% impervious cover, or even 75% impervious cover, you
don't want to double up.
Right. You don't want to increase the kind of building footprint. Also, over time, that pervious pavement will, you know, I think over time it'll get clogged and everything else. I also don't want to, you know, I would rather a developer, if they want to go, you know, up to 65% impervious cover, really focus on, you know, a lot of the stuff that you've included. I love rainwater harvesting, bioretention, rain gardens, green roofs, infiltration filter strips. I love the idea of incentivizing pollinator gardens, pollinator planting, native plantings, things like that. The question I had is, did you mean deer tolerant plants or deer resistant plants?
I meant I'm not sure technically. One deer could use for forage but not destroy, like our common what is it they're making tea out of now? The plant's escaping me. But you know, we have native plants that are, the deer won't eat it bare, but they do eat it. And
Well,
deer, because there are a lot of deer back where this would go.
Yeah, I think we're gonna be.
I know how to exactly define that.
Yeah, I think we're gonna want to be a little bit careful with that, incentivizing that along Bee Caves Road.
Yeah.
Just
Safety issue.
for the danger of incentivizing deer to
Along the road. I agree.
Yeah. I
um
would prefer just take that out. 'Cause
Okay.
I don't think it makes, But I do want to include the,
I think we should include natives, and there's a lot of natives that are, and where I thought you're going, I think it's a good idea. There are a lot of natives that are deer resistant, things like, rosemary, oleander, things like that, that are, drought resistant, deer resistant native species.
well, I'll tell you, my experience in Rollingwood, 50% of our people love deer, 50% want to kill them. I guess I have the dumb deer that come through our yard, because plants that we think that they won't eat, the young deer eat and tear it up still. And then they go, well, I'm not going to eat that again, but they've already torn up our plants. So, but I think that's a good thing to take out. So in kind of doing this, would y'all agree that we put maybe an additional safety issue in there that we could do, that would be part of the incentives, add safety features from the standpoint of, and I'm not sure how that would work, but just kind of a broad brush on that is, we've heard from our residents that they're concerned about two things: a vegetative barrier and safety issues about commercial properties. So if we include those two things in there as part of that incentive deal. David and Wally, y'all are on here. So, but let me ask you from a standpoint of if it's a little bit different, but I'm not opposed to, I like incentives, I'll tell you that. And that's the way we get people to, I think, do a better job of producing commercial properties that are both economical for them and is not intrusive into our residents' well-being. So if we did that at 50 and 15, and that doesn't mean they're going to get all that. They again, I think you have to have, my thought is that you have a report that comes in and says, okay, we're asking for 12% because of the following issues on that. And here's our engineer's report that says how we're going to handle this. And maybe ADT or somebody comes up and says, okay, we were asking 5% because of the safety feature. Now, Carrie, how is that going to affect you just from an operational standpoint if you did that? Or would that have to go to the council? Well, they're going to have to write the ordinance anyway. So I think that would be something that we don't have to fool with, I guess. But,
About that.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
and kind of where I was going, Tom, with, my idea of, 55 is taking, that's what we gave Endeavor, and 55 to 65. And basically, my idea is basically, for that 10%, to basically have an engineer certify and seal to the city that basically, the project's going to use water quality, water quality design features, and I think Brooks' list is terrific, that are basically not going to are going to achieve the same water quality and drainage as if it were 55%.
yeah. Yeah.
So in other words, you're using all the things that Brooke laid out of, rainwater harvesting and all the other suite. And basically it is going to, because of those design features, it is going to have the same, water quality effect as if it were 55%.
And can a design engineer, is this typical for a design engineer to say this swale or this or rainwater harvesting will produce the same outcome for this tract as if it were 50% impervious cover? So you're designing for the 50 or the 55%.
Right.
You're not setting a per feature incentive. You're saying whatever this combination of features produce within that range, you would get that increase.
Yeah, exactly right. And also it's not going to appreciably increase their workload because they're going to have to do the same
In it anyway.
water quality calculations for TCEQ. And basically, they're going to need to meet a non-degradation standard anyway. So, they're going to have that suite of things that a lot of which you've included. And basically, we're going to say, okay, from an engineering standpoint, show us that, okay, using these filtration steps in this area, using rainwater harvest, using, detention, you're going to achieve the same water quality on this site as if it were 55% and engineered to TCEQ standards.
Okay.
See, I think we end up at exactly the same spot.
Well, because that way you're also allowing it, but you're putting it on the engineer to basically certify it and seal it for both us, and also they're going to have to do the same for their plan for TCEQ. And also, Brooke, that also, because one of the areas that I'm concerned about on some of these is, some of steeper slopes, et cetera, and it's going to make them design and account for, steep slopes and everything else. So the whole suite of the project and all the controls and all the incentives works together for water quality.
So I would, to me, I mean, David, I agree with that. I would say I would like to add the two other things that I had in there. Additional vegetative buffer. If they make you're a water quality expert. So if I put a denser vegetative buffer between the commercial and the residential, that's going to affect both water quality and water quantity to a degree, is it not? Am I wrong on that?
I mean, it should, if you add more native vegetation to a buffer between, where, where your property is, and like, for instance, Eanes Creek, you should get some environmental uplift in terms of the additional native vegetation.
Okay.
It's got to be designed right, but
It's got to be designed right.
Absolutely.
Right. It's got to be designed right.
And that's the certification we're talking about. That was one thing that I really would like to see. Right now, that additional impervious cover from our 50% baseline that we have is not required. You don't have to have an engineer certification. You'd have to get the vote of the city council. And while I think they are well intentioned, I would like that. David, your point about a certification is great on that. Should we include this safety thing? Because we've heard that from a number of our residents, and as part of this incentive, and just say enhanced safety features that between the residential and commercial features, just leave it kind of an open-ended deal that they come up with their own plan of a safety feature to see on that. I would like to require that as in our recommendations, that they address the safety issues that I have. And it's not many properties, but we have some, like Elizabeth, where her backyard is flush with potential development that somebody could just walk into her backyard. And for those, and we have others, there's others that's the case on. So I think that I would like for them to address the safety, how they're going to do that as part of this too.
And Tom, I would agree with you, and I will do some research on what those kinds of safety features might be.
And Brooke, I'm thinking that we put that in our recommendations, but the city has to, when they do the ordinance, that's where they'll have to come up with the nuts and bolts of that. This is just our recommendation to them, is that they include a safety review before they do that, and that they have a safety plan. And that I'm just going to leave it at a broad brush on that. But I would like, we've heard from our neighbors that they want a vegetative area and they want a safety feature on that. And among some of the other things that we have.
By safety feature, do you mean like fencing or?
It could be a fencing, it could be,
A wall.
I'm always reluctant to be too specific about an ordinance because somebody can come up with a heck of a lot better plan than I can, and I don't want to limit somebody's ability to come up with doing that. Now you can always add and other items that you may come up, that you may design to enhance the safety between there. But I want that to be something that commercial properties have to consider to get that incentive on that they have to look at that and come up with a plan on it. And it may be that they have, it can be alarms, motion sensors, something between there. I don't know what it would be. That's beyond my pay grade to try to figure that out. But I know people do that. And so we can, again, I would leave that to the experts to come up with a plan. I just want to make sure that we include that as part of the incentive package, that they look at that and come up with that plan on that. So, and I wish, so that's, I think, so going back to this, do we want to go with the 55 and then give them 10% incentive? That's a pretty good incentive to do that. And looking at the impervious cover calculations that I looked at, most of these ones that are apt to be redeveloped are already over the 50% anyway. With the exception of those that have a large area in the floodplain. So I want to make sure that we give a adequate incentive to redevelop with these type of conditions, as opposed to just leave it and they go, look, I've got X amount of square footage. If I'm, if I just leave it like it is, but I'm not, Wally, this is specifically to you. We're not fussing at you. You didn't build it, you got it, but it's, if we can have something better that's more productive for the city as well as less intrusive to our neighbors, that's what we want. And it meets the requirements that our neighbors have said that they want to try to get on Bee Caves Road. So
let me add one thing, Tom.
Yes, sir.
With all the regulations you have now, I think that you need to consider reducing your PUD requirement to below 4.5 acres.
Okay.
Because I think anybody would want to come in and develop my property and maybe obtain 2 or 3 others. They're going to want to be able to come in and work with the city about all the things that we've been talking about here for a number of weeks. Landscaping in the rear, safety features, height of the buildings. I've got 2 buildings that are at the 2-story level, and they do not protrude. Well, apparently they do have a roof protrusion. You can see the top of the roof. How many houses in Rollingwood are sitting where you don't see, all you see of the neighboring buildings at the top of the roof? It's just, there's a lot of requirements that are being talked about that I think if you really want to encourage anybody to develop it, you've got to put it in the context of a PUD. Well,
I'll tell you, my feeling is that I like PUDs because if I do this as a zoning, I never know what you're going to get. If I do it as a PUD, I absolutely know what the plans are when I approve it. And I like that. There are some negatives to it because we have to rely on future city councils, what they approve, because keeping in mind that a city council can give a variance on a development ordinance, not a building ordinance, but a development ordinance if they want to anyway. So I'm not sure that the zoning part of that makes much difference, but I'm in favor of, just so you know, I'm in favor of the PUD reduction on that. I'm not sure, the 5 acre requirement we have was arbitrary, as far as I remember. I don't know that I was even around when that was done, but I'm not sure that it makes a difference if it's 3 acres or 5 acres on that. We've got about 4 tracts of land that I think are suitable for a PUD development on that. Some of which are 4.5 acres, some of which are 2.5 acres. But I think that that's something that I would, and what if we address that by saying that we think that P&Z and the city should look at the reduction of the size requirement for commercial PUDs on that.
Sounds fine. Let it take a look at it and see if that's something they want.
Yeah, because Tom, I think, you know, the thing we need to guard against is you don't want to set up a situation where you can have, you know, dozens of little small standalone PUDs. You
Yeah.
want to be big enough
Yeah.
in terms of acreage where you encourage a developer to go out and, you know, get multiple lots and kind of make it worth the, you know, particularly some of these smaller lots, to aggregate multiple lots. So you make it worth the city's while to work with them, and they're worth their while, frankly, to work with them on something. But, you know, is that number, you know, I mean, I have to look at it closer and conceptualize, but, you know, is that number 3? You're right. Is it, you know, is it 3 acres? You know, is that the right size? Is it 2.5? I don't, sitting here right now, I don't know, but I agree with you. I think 5 is, given our commercial district, is probably a little bit on the big side.
If you wanted to look at this from a standpoint, and remember the plan that we looked at some months ago, that was a visualization of BK's Road. That would require a PUD on about 2.5 acres. Is where that would be. And that's basically,
Sorry.
and I'm trying to think who did that, but we had a visualization that somebody drew up for us, and I apologize, I can't recall the name, but it was
I don't recall a visualization.
there was a plan that was that we looked that came up, that was, and I'll get another copy and send to people. I think it was, but it's been right at the beginning of looking at this. We had one of our neighbors came up with a kind of a drawing that showed a shopping district on BK's Road that was done on that. And in looking at that, I tried to figure out where that would fit. And it seemed like to me it would take about 2.5 acres to make that fit. And that's you know, but that could be a PUD. I would like for them to look at this. This is not something that this gets back into the zoning classifications that we have. So I would, my feeling is we just make a recommendation that they review the sizes on that. And David, and I think we put that caveat that we don't reduce it to a point where we encourage small lot PUDs on that.
Well, I'm a dissenting voice on that recommendation.
Okay.
I think we need to encourage combinations of lots as opposed to splitting up of big lots in order to achieve a more unified look along BK's Road.
Well, but if they have, I think that's what David was saying. And so we have to have a size limitation. Is it 2.5 acres, 3 acres, 4 acres, or 5 acres? We just don't have the ability on the number of lots that we have, the smaller lots that we have. For instance, if you wanted to do, if somebody came in, and this is just an example, and bought everything from the finish line to Edge Grove on the north side of BK's Road. That's about 2.5 acres of land. And they could do that by,
A good year.
yeah, if that just was all gone. And I'm not suggesting they need to be gone, but I'm saying if, as an example, if they bought that and wanted to put in a retail deal that would go there, restaurants or whatever, then you're going to see that we have, it would make it more plausible for a developer to do that as a PUD than it would be for combining the lots and re-subdividing and do that. The good part to PUDs to me is I know what I'm going to get when I approve a PUD, because you're approving the plan.
No, but from the homeowner side, they don't know what they're gonna get.
Well, but with a PUD, like for instance, Mara Vista and Rollingwood Town Centers, both of those are PUDs. We
Yeah.
didn't approve just a general plan. We approved the plan that went there. So we knew exactly what was going to go there before we approved it. And I like that concept.
Yeah, and we've had this conversation that from a citizen's point of view, when it's a PUD, you're requiring citizens who are concerned about it or that might back up to it to
Yeah.
stay involved throughout the whole process rather than relying on the code we're just designed to take care of their issues. So that's the problem I have. That, and it won't encourage the smaller tracts to combine their development.
Yeah, and I think we're thinking the same, we're trying to get to the same spot, because I'm thinking with the PUD, you do combine the different lots. Because you're not gonna go through a PUD on a single lot, because you already know what you can put there. There's no advantage for you to do that. You have to have a fairly sizable tract to do that. And so I think let me work on a wording that hopefully can get us there. I'm just suggesting they look at this to maybe say less than 5 acres, but more than 2 acres or something along that line. Because I don't want to make it do it.
Opposed to reducing it, because we would, not to pick on Wally, but we'd take one of the larger lots and it could
Yeah.
be split up.
I'm not going to take it just at 4.5 acres. And so I just take one lot. If I were going to do this, it would have to be 2.5 acres or more that you put together, or 3 acres to put together. But I'm not,
Yeah, and
the city can look at that anytime they want to.
yeah, and Tom, like I just looked at like a for instance, and I just did a real quick and dirty thing on Google Earth, and like basically if you looked at redeveloping everything from finish line to Edge Grove, if someone someday got all that, it'd be about 4 acres.
Yeah.
So it would prevent the kind of the PUD situation.
Yeah.
Tom, I was only suggesting that as a developer all my life, the first thing you do when you start looking at a land you think you might want to buy to redevelop, what are the requirements? What are the restrictions? What are the hoops I'm going to have to jump through? And the very first thing as a developer I see is, well, I can't file a PUD because you have a limitation of 5 acres. I simply would like to see that more generously defined, or just the city state, we will encourage the presentation of PUD developments on 2.5 acres or larger, or some minimum number, where as opposed to what you have right now is you basically have the effectiveness of, you only have probably one property, maybe a second property that I don't know about. You've got the hospital property that would probably qualify on your 5 acres right now. And outside of that, I don't know if you have anything else that would qualify. So that says to a developer, I might as well go look elsewhere.
Well, I think what Brooke is saying, and Brooke, correct me, I don't like to tell people what they're saying. But Brooke is saying, and this is something that I think we want to encourage, is the incorporation of multiple properties into a development rather than an individual property being developed one at a time. Same thing. I think we get there. I'm not, there's some negatives with PUDs. And if we discouraged, a unified development on BK's Road, that would be something I would not be in favor of. But I'd like to see us, I'd like to see the city address that and come up with a number that gets us there without having the other. The other part about that is the city can change that. If I wanted to do a 3-acre PUD, I could apply to the city and ask them to either give me a waiver of the 5-acre minimum, or which they could do, and do that anyway. So let me get back and make sure I've got my notes right on this. Are we good at 55% and 10% incentives? I'm good with that, as long as
I'm good
we
with it,
offer
too.
enough incentives and we protect our water quality and the runoff. I'm okay with that. Just looking at the numbers, I really want to encourage some redevelopment on some of these lots that have higher percentages of impervious cover than that is right now. And when I say encourage redevelopment, it has to meet these requirements that we have. We're not going to give them this for just give it to them. They have to have it certified that it meets that requirements.
Well, and even those properties that, Tom, are way over, 55, 65% impervious cover, using, using, modern design like we'd want to see, engineers, developers are used to developing it, to designing those standards, especially with what we've done and been doing with the, I feel like with the setbacks.
Okay. Well,
I can live with it.
let's just do this to kind of formalize that. Can I get a motion on that and then a second, and we'll go ahead and put that in our numbers?
Move to adopt the 55% impervious cover with provisions for impervious cover to be raised to 65%.
All right. We have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second that within, I'm going to add one thing that kind of Brooke mentioned, I think is worth adding in there to kind of bridge something you said and Tom said, basically 55 up to 65 with the things that Brooke enumerated,
Yes.
including other water quality best management practices as prescribed by TCEQ, LCRA, and other state agencies.
If you make that an amendment to my motion, I accept it.
Well, let me add two others. One, that we include the vegetative barrier buffer. God, I'm going to use that term as part of that, and a safety feature.
I would accept both as amendments.
And it'd be certified by an engineer.
So these are amendments to 1A and B?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and we have a motion and a second. And again, we'll do this. If you're opposed, raise your hand. If not, everybody's in favor. I don't see any hands. I think we're good. Okay, I think this is Brooke.
Do we want to do in 3 also, Tom?
I'm sorry.
Well, we just covered impervious cover.
Oh, yeah. Let's go ahead and vote on this other 1C.
Did 1C because that's a certification, but we haven't done 2 or 3.
Okay, I am. I think with the well, let me kind of say this. 2 and 3, I am good with the addition of solar panels in number 1, in 2A.
Way, I think you,
Yeah,
Solar-
2A.
okay.
I want to make sure if we put in solar panels that they are, there's a barrier there. And that we add that if they, from a masking standpoint, if they're required to mask those and there is a height limit, only necessary where masking is required. And let's see, the dark sky deal, I was just going to, I'm okay with just going with that wording. And then when we get down into the writing the ordinances, we have to figure out what that is. And then on 3, my notes say, on 3A, my concern there was text dot, and I would like there to put that we put that where possible, because that's, there may be a place they can put it there and it may be not. And we add, and also where rear sidewalks or walkways may be employed.
Okay,
And if somebody wants to make that motion with those.
What I'm trying to figure out is I'm okay with the B part where we're saying we're going to basically employ the tree ordinance to commercial properties. What I'm trying to figure out is, because I agree with the concept, I'm trying to figure out how we encourage basically planting shade trees, basically shade trees to allow shade for pedestrian areas.
well, I think that's the rewriting of A,
Yeah.
that 3A. What I wrote down was recommend within the setback along Bee Caves Road where possible and where rear setbacks are employed, and I can include sufficient trees to shade sidewalks.
And Brooke, how do you feel about sidewalks and other pedestrian areas or other, pedestrian areas?
Yeah.
Pedestrian areas,
Pedestrian walks.
walks, okay, I like that.
Okay.
And then the B, it's a little, it says employ a tree ordinance similar to that in residential areas that will preserve heritage trees and require replacement of protected trees. So it doesn't have to be exactly like
Yeah.
it gives a little.
I'm not sure we can legally require basically I don't think we can legally prohibit the removal of heritage trees.
Okay. I'll do that as protect.
Yeah, but I think one thing you can do is you can basically require if they cut down a heritage tree, a scenario where, like, if they cut down say it's a 20-inch oak, you're requiring them to replace it with, basically the same caliper breadth of multiple oak trees. You say, okay, well, you cut down a 20-inch oak tree, we want you to replace it with, a minimum of 4 or 5-inch oak trees.
Yeah. Same inches of tree.
Yeah, I mean, it's something, where you make it basically commiserate with, the replacement. What you want is, if they're going to cut down a heritage tree, you want the replacement to be as commiserate with the impact as you possibly can.
Okay. I can reword that.
Okay.
Well, from a concept standpoint, let's go ahead and vote on that with the caveat of what we did, and we'll get that and approve it in our minutes next time the wording.
And I'll rewrite what I've done with all 8, 1, 2, and 3 to
Right.
match.
Excellent. Okay,
So moved.
there we go.
On-
And
So
we
moved
have
on
a
2A.
motion and a second, and we will, again, raise your hand if you're opposed, and I don't see any. And we will check that and bring that back. And we
Who
frequently.
was the
do
second on that, Tom?
that. David.
Okay.
I second it.
Oh, I thought he did. Maybe he
I did.
Okay, he did. Thought he did. Okay.
All right.
Brooke, I want to thank you for
Well-
doing this work. I think that's great. And I think that I feel good about where we're going on this. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion.
A second.
We have a second. And I don't see any hands up opposed, so we are adjourned.
Thank you all.
all very much.
Thank you.